Hey everybody, it is your pal Devo. Thank you for checking this video out. I don't know if I'm gonna, eventually make this into a series. It kind of depends on if there's interest for it or, if I want to just keep making them. But I thought it'd be cool to kind of do a little time lapse chat about the process of how I do these drawings and the illustrations, and if it could help out anybody that is looking for some sort of tips for their drawings. But for this commission, we were doing a character named Ness, which is a Final Space OC character inspired by the show that I worked on. And the process behind the scenes is normally I do this kind of back and forth with the rough drawing and to get the approval, and then I go forward and do the ink and paint, which is what you guys are seeing right now. So this is the process where I love, and I love jumping into the ink and paint because I get to have a little bit more fun and play around. But for this ink line, I'm doing a pretty simple drawing over the rough, and I'm going thick and thin with a kind of comic inspired brush that I think I got from Kyle Brushes. You can see on the video here. And I tend to not get too worried about being too tight, or too tight with my cleanup. I think over the years I've just kind of been okay with the mistakes, and I think the mistakes and just kind of offness of doing ink drawings just adds more life to a drawing and just makes it feel a little bit more natural and less like it was made by a robot. But I tend to not get too hell-bent about making little mistakes on some of this line work, and I think it just gives me a more natural feel and gives me a kind of unique style for my own personal work. And I like drawing these characters just because working on Final Space as an art director, it was awesome to kind of create characters and build the overall look of the show. And it's nice to have a community of fans that really just love the lore and want to build upon it and add their own characters to the mix. So this is always fun. I love drawing in that style and drawing those characters. Even after working on it. And I just personally love doing color illustration and kind of painted work in Photoshop. So now you can kind of see that I'm throwing in the flats, which are basically the flat colors of the drawing of after I've essentially made a masked folder of the silhouette of this character. So you can see that I'm easily just kind of painting on the inside of the silhouette of the character without worrying about going outside the lines because of the masking. So masks are definitely a huge tool that I used in order to get through a process quicker, rather than spending too much time on a drawing for multiple days. I try to get these done within a 2 to 3 hour period as far as the ink and paint goes. And that's just kind of like how my mental clock goes. I tend to try not to noodle around too much with details. Although you'll see at the end of this video, I start doing kind of like, white highlights on certain parts of the character just to accentuate certain lighting moments and stuff like that. And, this is a process that I'm still kind of growing and learning as I go along, just to kind of build my own personal style of how I like to do illustrations, which is kind of all over the place for the most part. But I tend to like to just go into something naturally and just go by the hip. And if something works for me, I'll roll with it. If it doesn't, then I'll kind of keep noodling with it until I'm happy. Obviously, like with these clouds and whatnot, that's kind of where I think I was pretty noodly with it at the end of it, and just ultimately kind of tried to simplify it and mask certain areas that I thought were a little bit too rough with foreground elements and that sort of thing. But ultimately with this character, with the palette that was given to me from the client, that she has a lot of blues, light blues, that sort of thing, and I think kind of creating a sort of very bubbly night scene in the stars was really fun with this character, and you could see how obviously with having these like shooting stars and light kind of coming behind the clouds, that it gives you the opportunity to play with the light a lot more and add these backlit sort of situations, which adds a little bit more drama to the situation. And I tend to like to do a lot of these drawings where I have really kind of some sort of light source or heavy light source weighing on the character, along with um, a point of entry where I can put a rim light or a bounce light from another kind of source that's coming into the picture, which will always highlight the character best, I feel, rather than just having a completely solid um, bucket fill of the whole character, which is mainly used for production purposes in the animation industry, especially in adult animation, where we're building turnarounds and stuff for reference purposes that are going to be passed on to like animators and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that for this piece, this is kind of where I'm experimenting and using different brush types to help soften certain areas in the design. And obviously I'm taking a cartoon sort of TV show point of design and making it a little bit more dynamic for like poster purposes. This is kind of how I would do promo pieces, or how we would do them on Final Space for posters and whatnot. And I just tend to like promotional images to be a little bit more illustrative and more rendered in a kind of like a poster sense, so it's a better representation of what the show is, especially when you're trying to attract new viewers and just get people excited about a new project. Because I feel like it's always best to have promotional images that are super engaging and like a piece of art rendered. Because I think it comes back to how movie posters are made, and back in the day, and where posters were more of the front to get people excited about a piece of art or a piece of film. And this is kind of just the same thing. So yeah, as we get further into this rendering, I'm also trying to give it a kind of painterly look at the same time, where you'll see that I bring in like a watercolor brush, soft and a hard, to add texture to the hair. You'll notice that you could see that I'm doing blending, light blending with the hair, with the follicles, with the ends of the highlights. And then getting really harsh with the lighting as the shooting stars pass by, to add a little bit more kind of dynamic lighting to the situation, which in turn will kind of create a very warm, night feel that ultimately I think is really charming for this type of piece. I love doing character posing, or just trying to draw really dynamic poses for characters, just because I think that's where our industry is in animation, as far as the type of work that we have to provide to animation studios. And this is just a great way to have fun with it on the side and play with the ideas of light and color. And I think for me, also adding this other element of photography editing, which I got from working on different jobs and commercials and stuff. You'll see here, this is when I'm kind of flattening the image now and using different kind of filters within Photoshop to kind of crush the image and add different elements to posterize it a little bit more and make it feel like a piece of art. And this is just a lot of processing that you wouldn't really do in animation. Yeah, there is like kind of filters and certain things that you can do to affect the picture. But this is, I think, more of like photography and editing and illustrative editing, um, that I've just learned just from working with photographers and picking their brains about certain things. But there's different tools like threshold, posterizing your image, obviously messing with your hue, saturation, curves. Adding adjustment layers is huge, that I constantly do, and then blending the adjustments with the original image to kind of give you a different look. And I'm always tweaking with these different tools just to kind of help me get to that final image. But as we come to the end here, you'll see that, ultimately I'm starting to be more nitpicky about lighting and adding like little highlights and rim lights and things like that, just to kind of pop it a little bit more, and anything to kind of enhance the image. That's what I do, and focusing mainly on the character and what the character's doing. But ultimately, yeah, this is something that is really easy to do, really fun. It's just a matter of patience and being willing to kind of sit with something and layer and layer and layer, and not being worried about mistakes and focusing more on the integrity of the image, and you'll come out with something like this. It's pretty fairly easy, and I think anybody can do it over time. So thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.